Ship Live. I'm here with Chris Pinkowski, and I'm JJ Hardy. Chris, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, JJ. I've finally just gotten my body temperature back from being out at the Eagles parade yesterday when it was 30 degrees and windy. We were out there for about 6 hours, 7 hours. So I'm finally thawed out and ready to go.
It's interesting how when you do something like that and you're outside for a long period of time when it's really windy and cold outside, how those shivers just stay with you. You're not even cold. You just feel like you're constantly shivering.
Yeah. Yeah, like we were layered up, like we were ready to go. Us and me, my two oldest sons, and 1.5 million other raving fans out there braving the cold. So
Yep.
that didn't
Well,
keep us warm, all that body heat, though.
you got to do those things though. I mean, it's exciting for you. It's exciting for the family. It's just, um, it's getting out of the house and having fun. I mean,
Absolutely.
COVID is long in the past, so you got to go out there and experience life.
Yes.
So, Chris, we're having a conversation today about what makes a culture,
Mhm.
which this is going to be awesome because we talk about this constantly. But
Yeah.
to you, what makes a culture?
Man, a culture, you can look at it from a couple different ways, right? The one of the most common ways that we think about culture is that it's your organization's core values in action, right? It's the behaviors that are demonstrated by the people who work in your organization that's consistent across the board. And it's a way that companies differentiate themselves from other competing companies is through their culture. Your culture is what attracts the right employees to your organization. It's what kind of keeps the wrong ones away if your culture is presented in the right way, during the recruiting process. Um, it can also affect the types of clients that you want to work with. If if there are clients out there who don't mesh with your culture, then that actually puts a strain on your employees to service those clients because there's going to be some kind of clash. So your culture is really has is so far reaching throughout an organization. It's so important.
You're right. And there's some, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be quite honest with you, but there's some more stuff there. I mean, it's the clothing that you expect people to wear. It's the language that you speak. I mean, some places, they want you to be super professional and they want you to keep the laughing and joking to a minimum, and they want I mean, but it's everything. The entire it's the entire vibe that your
Yeah,
company has. And so,
it's
not
the
just
vibe.
it's the
Yes,
vibe, man.
100%.
But it's not just the core values, right? It's also, that vision that the owner and those senior leaders have in your organization of what they want that company to look like,
Mhm.
and mixed with the core values, and that needs to be shared
Yeah,
with not just the senior leaders, but every leader within the organization. And they should expect it will not just expect, but they should set that expectation that the down trace leaders all throughout the organization is also carrying those core values and that vision out, to the best of their ability. I mean, obviously, no one has the same vision, no one has the same core values, but if they are just portraying what that owner and those senior leaders wish for that organization, then that's really all it takes.
yeah, and the culture is really the glue that holds so much of an organization together. And while it may be set at the top, you're right. It has to be part of the fabric of the organization all the way down to your frontline people. Um, it's one of the reasons that I mentioned about the hiring and recruiting process, because you want to make sure that as you're bringing people into the organization that there is some kind of cultural match. um, One of the things that I like to do when I'm interviewing is I will always talk about our core values, and I will ask my candidates to tell me about a time that they did something that was aligned to one of those core values. So, For example, if one of our core values is always going above and beyond for the customer, I'm going to tell that candidate what that means to us. What's our definition of that? How do we make that happen throughout the organization? Then I'm going to say, by the way, can you tell me about a time in your career that you have done a behavior that matches with this? So if they can't come up with something and I bring up multiple core values and they can't give me, examples, then that's a good sign that they're probably not a fit for our culture and probably not a fit for our organization. So it's blocking that at the very outset so that you don't have people that are counter to your culture.
Oh yeah, can't cancer is definitely something that'll happen if well, yeah, you just want to make sure people are that right fit for you. I mean, especially if you're a good old boy that just wants good old boy type values in your organization, and then you have someone in there that's the stuffy corporate type. Well,
Yeah.
they're probably not going to fit too well in your organization. But
No.
this comes back to what we were talking about when we were discussing accountability, right? So when when we when we are making this culture happen in our organization and we're setting that stage, I mean, we're going to go into some of the execution and a few of our future calls, but it's really important to make sure that you are communicating these things consistently and often, and that's that initial expectation. So you're right. As soon as somebody walks in the door, but also making sure that whenever you are doing these regular counselings or performance reviews or whatever the case may be, that you're communicating these things. But it also goes back to the nonverbal communication. How are you making sure uh, you are reminding people of these core values and the vision for the organization without having to have that conversation with them all the time as well. And so, I mean, that can be company posters, that can be maybe your core values. If you're in a management position, everybody's email has to have the four core values of your organization in the signature block of their email. I mean, there can be a zillion ways of doing it, but just that finding ways of constantly reminding without being that annoying guy at the top that just constantly talks about the values all the time.
Yeah. It's your actions speak louder than words. So when you're a leader in the organization, whether you're a senior executive or you're a frontline manager, your actions need to be consistent with the values of the organization, which drive the culture.
Yep.
And by your people seeing that, right, you can have all the visual reminders in the world plastered around the workplace, right? You can have your values written on one of your biggest walls, as soon as people walk in your lobby, whatever. Um, Words are good, right? They remind you, but actions are better. When your people see the actions that you're taking and that your managers are taking, then they understand that that is the standard, right?
Yep.
That is the expectation. But, one of the other things too, and you mentioned, I just want to expand on this, is when you're keeping that in front of people, I like to do, and you and I talked about this in previous episodes a couple times, but rather than just doing one annual review, right? You want to do these quarterly kind of, I don't even call them reviews. I call them quarterly performance planning. So the purpose there is you're looking back on the last quarter. Hey, how did you do on the goals that were set? How could I help you? What are we going to set goals for the next quarter? But also, I've seen this done in a few companies, and I love this idea where each quarter you're looking at kind of the 4 or 5 core values of the company, whatever they are, and you're also incorporating that into your quarterly planning. So
Yep.
you're saying, "Hey JJ, I've noticed that you've done X that really demonstrates this one core value. I've noticed this." So calling it out in a positive way during those quarterly meetings, if you see something counter to that in between, you always have to address address it right away, right? You never wait for a formal review to address
Oh no.
a performance, anything negative in someone's performance or culture, attitude, whatever. But you use those quarterly times to reinforce that, hey, this is how I've seen you live up to these values. And it just continues to reinforce it from there.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language, buddy. I mean, I grew up with the model of doing two things: you teach, you coach, you mentor, and then the process of bringing people up to your level. We use leading, developing, and achieving. So
Hmm.
these are two models that you can use to do this. And when it comes to developing, it's not just hiring the right people, right? As they start going up to the next level and getting these promotions and stuff like that, it's also filtering out and making sure that you are grooming these potential managers, potential directors, whatever, for that next position. And that it, walking the walk and walking the talk and all that other stuff, that is just as important. But making sure that now they know that at each level that development, you're not just developing these frontline people. Now you're developing other managers.
Yeah.
Now you're not just developing these managers, you're also developing other directors, and so on and so forth. And making sure that the mission, the vision, and the core values are always forefront in these people's mind, because it's almost like what we say in the military: this commander's intent.
Hmm.
You can't plan a mission without knowing the commander's intent.
Right.
Well, the constant intent is to make sure this company has the mission, the vision, and the core values in mind of the company. uh there will be submissions along the way every
Hmm.
day, sometimes multiple. But if you keep those initial ones, what was this company created for in the first place? And what do you want the people to be like in the first? What did you want the people to be like in the first place? And making sure everybody keeps and holds to that, it's very, very important. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying you don't let people be individuals, because people have to be themselves while they're doing all of these things. But it's more along the lines of just you're right. How do you take care of customers? When we're passing down missions, jobs, whatever you want to call them down the line, how is that communicated? How do we treat our employees? I mean, are we kind of standoffish and or not standoffish? Do we stand back and just let them kind of lead themselves, or are we kind of in the mix with them all the time, or are we kind of a mixture of the two where we kind of let them lead themselves? I mean, all of these things are mixed with the core values, the culture, and all this other stuff.
Yeah. And culture, it just shapes everything within the company, right?
Yes.
You one of the old sayings, right, by
Uh-oh.
Peter Drucker, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have the best strategy, right, that you think, right? This is our strategy to go from 5 to $50 million. Well, is it aligned with your culture? Because if it's not, then you've got one organization running over here, matching the culture. But if your strategy is cutting across that, you're going to have major performance issues because that's not how your people are used to doing things. And I'm not saying that you only do things because that's how you've always done them, right? This entire series here is about change. This is the first episode where we're talking about culture because that's a big component.
Yes.
But you don't avoid change, but your strategy has to be consistent with your culture. Otherwise, it's an uphill battle the entire way.
Yep. Well, and you know what? And I wasn't going to bring this up, but I've been thinking about this whole call. I was listening to, gosh, it was about a month and a half ago. I was listening to a brief, and this company said what made them most successful is that their culture, when it comes time for change, is that they are faster than anybody else. And what their culture was is that they embrace failure to make the company better. And so they were known for as if an idea came to the surface on Monday, by Wednesday they were already taking it to market.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, apparently this cup. You know what? Now I'm gonna have to go back and figure out what that was. But you know, they were known, and this is why they would always beat their competitors, is because by the time they had an idea, they brought it to the table, mission planned it, you know, sorted out the execution plan, and then put it to action faster than anybody else in their field.
You know, speed is a big variable. You see that in kind of small and nimble companies, but it's not impossible in larger companies.
Oh no,
You
usually
can
things are sitting in somebody's inbox for days and days and days, and that's usually what keeps something from even being discussed for a while.
Yeah, and you know what? Man, I love this because this is the perfect kind of example of how culture and strategy need to work together. Because even in a large company, if your culture is speed, if your culture is we move things along fast so that we learn, we iterate, we continue growing, then those kind of ideas are going to move through. You can move like a nimble organization regardless of your size if that's part of your culture. But
Yes.
good luck if you're a Fortune 100 company and that is not part of your culture. Now all of a sudden you've got people talking about, well, we need to do a study on this and we need to do X. And it's going to take us at least 6 to 9 months to gather our research and come up with an execution plan. And in that 6 to 9 months that the Fortune 100 is taking, farting around, you've got a small company that probably in 30 days is already on the path.
Yeah.
So, that's a cultural thing. But even the biggest companies, if you got that kind of culture, you can make things happen. But that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
It really, really is. And you know, that brings me to my next note, and you actually talked about it a little bit ago, is, you know, if something or somebody specifically does not fit into that culture, even if you thought they would in the beginning, or maybe they grew away from that culture as a person, that happens sometimes.
Mhm.
You know, you have to address that toxicity very quickly.
Yeah.
Whether it's using that teach, coach, mentor model to get somebody back to where they need to be, or it's it's coaching them out of the company.
Yeah.
Those are really the two strategies that are very important. And you know, you want to be known, not that you have to do it. I mean, there's that fire quickly thing that a lot of companies abide to, but you know, you got to be careful with that, because if you're known for just firing super fast, then you're going to have a lot of employees there being in fear of not having their job. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a dichotomy that has to be balanced very, very, very carefully, and you know, making sure that you do get the ones that truly cannot be coached through that out of the company very quickly, while at the same time making sure that everybody that is there, they know that you're that person, you're that supportive person, or the managers in your company are those supportive people that will help nurture them through the process. But if somebody does not fit your company culture, and you can see that they're not going to be a good fit, I mean, that doesn't make them bad, but you know, you have to make sure you're maintaining your company culture. So sometimes it's a good idea to, you know, let that person be open to the job market again.
Yeah, you're right. And I'll take it a step further too, because if we're kind of if we're going to couch this in the broader conversation of change, right? There are companies out there, every company, every organization has a culture, whether or not it's defined or kind of well known, right? I used to take companies through an exercise who would say to me, hey, I need leadership development for my people. And I would always ask about culture and values. And they would say, we don't have them defined or whatever. I would take them through an organization or an exercise to discover what their values were, right? And it was really based on, hey, let's look at your universe of employees and let's see what is common amongst them. And then you would always find the outliers that's like, Joe Snuffy, he's been here for 20 years. We've got 5 core values. He matches one of them, but he's super dependable. He just shows up. He just doesn't match these other things. And you would have to say, well, you have to get rid of Joe Snuffy.
Yep.
Because we want to make a focus on these core values. Everyone kind of behaves that way anyway. So now let's drive it home. Let's make it official. But when you can get some of the entrenched people out because they don't match your core values, right? You backfill them with people that do match your core values through your recruitment efforts. But here's the other thing. If you're worried about being known as an organization that just like gets rid of people because they're not matching your core values, or you're getting rid of people too quickly, I guarantee you that if you go back and you talk to your employees, once that person has been removed, the remaining people that match your culture, they're not mad at all that you got rid of Joe Snuffy.
They're relieved.
The only thing they miss about Joe Snuffy not being around was his morning jokes. And they were going to get past that, right? So I think that a lot of managers, and you bring up a good point here, JJ, I think that managers can sometimes be fearful of pulling the trigger to get someone out because maybe they are good in one area. But you get rid of that person, your morale is actually going to go up because people see that other person as a drag, not only on the culture, but on them as a team. And it just doesn't mix. So, I want people to get that out of their head that you're going to have some kind of revolt by your employees because you're getting rid of someone. Man, it's going to be good times when you get rid of somebody that doesn't match your culture.
It is. So back to the military. I spent too damn long there, so it's always going to come back to the military for me. But we had something called a mission essential task list. we it's an acronym. We called it METAL tasks. And in those METAL tasks, we had whatever the job focus was for that organization that we were in. There for each type of those organizations, there were mission driven tasks, but there was always leadership development in there. And those leadership development tasks, they were based off of what the Army values were. Okay. And because they wanted to make sure that every person that served in a leadership position within the military made sure that they were upholding the image of the United States military. They wanted us to be strong, driven, empathetic leaders. And if that's what you want for your organization, that's fine. But if you do regular leadership development training, or if you do regular training for your company, don't be afraid to train on the specific core values that you have, and even doing in-depth training sessions to your managers and stuff on those core values, because once you dig in to what those mean to you and your why for that organization, it's all about making a clear and concise understanding for each person that you're dealing with. So if you're willing to go so far as to do training for these things, it's going to help everybody execute in the end. And by the way, identifying those nice guys that had the great jokes in the morning, it's going to be a lot easier to identify those people because you're going to spot them from a mile away. You're going to spot a non-culture fit from a mile away.
Yeah. And I just want to take something you just said and make a little more emphasis on it. You said that if you're willing to train on those things, you should. I'm going to say that if you want your organization to be successful, you must train on those things because you want to make sure that the definition of each of those core values, right, what it means to the organization, how it supports the why, is the same. Like they can be subjective, right? People can look at words on a sheet of paper or words on a wall and it says like we provide the best customer service in the industry. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, here is the definition of Leadership Live, how we define providing the best customer service in the industry. This is our why. This is how we do it. So when you're talking to Mary or Joe or whoever else in your organization, you say, "Hey, what does this mean?" They all give you the same answer. So you take the ambiguity out of it, the subjectivity, and get everyone speaking the same language. So you if you just kind of gloss over this and do the wave tops as an organization, you're going to be there more than someone who doesn't. But I'm going to encourage everybody to take it that next step and say you must train on your core values so that everyone has the same exact definition in mind when you talk about them.
Yeah. And what I when I meant to say willing, I mean internally it's kind of hard for some companies depending on their size to do that.
Sure.
But you're right. It is important to train on these things. And anything that you can do to bring awareness to what you want your values and your culture to be in your organization, it does require training because
Yeah.
saying it doesn't mean anything. I mean, we talked about it already. Saying it, interviewing people to these values, making sure that we are getting rid of people that don't fit in this value set. I mean, making sure that you don't just talk the talk, you walk the talk, showing people what you want these values to look like. But training is extremely important. And if you can't, and if you don't have the resources within your company to do that, you should probably hire a provider. There are tons of people. Chris used to do it for a living.
Mhm.
I mean, that's one thing that you did. I mean, leadership coaches, we don't just do that one-on-one coaching thing. We also
Yeah.
do group coaching, and then we do training as well. Well, most of them do. Some people only do the coaching.
Right.
I think it's a missed opportunity, but make sure you're hiring a provider to help you with this, because training these values will definitely enhance your culture.
Yeah. I used to say that all the time when I would be meeting with potential clients, right, in my past career. I would say, do you hire an accountant to do your taxes or do you try to do your taxes yourself?
Yeah.
Do you hire, you name the specialty, or do you try to do that yourself? Now, if you're a Fortune 100 company, you most likely have like an L&D department, so you can do that yourself. You also have an accounting department and you've got all these different specialties. Awesome. If you're a small business, 50 to even 150 employees, you probably don't have all those different departments, and you should be, you know, bringing in experts who can actually get this done for you.
Yeah. Well, and I even had a client that had over 500 employees that they still didn't have this built in. So just
Right.
don't assume that just because you have a whole crapload of employees that you can handle this yourself. But somebody who is skilled in leadership with a background in operations, especially, can help you with the training.
Yep.
And if you want to get to the point where you're teaching it internally, that can be built in, but you have to be intentional about it. Okay, now we're at the end. That's what Leadership Live is all about, by the way.
Yeah.
This is not just a bunch of chit chat about core values and leadership and all that crap. It's not that at all. This is straight talk about actionable leadership guidance that if you walked away from one of these calls, you can take action immediately and make a change tomorrow.
That's right.
And if And if you're listening to this and you're not taking action, or if you're learning things anywhere in your company and you don't take action on those things that you learn, then you're leaving money on the table. Don't do that.
No.
You know, learn, plan, take action. Don't ever stop doing that.
That's right.
Chris, you have any closing comments for today?
You pretty much summed it up. And, we kind of alluded to this during the episode, but, I just want to kind of wrap things up here to let people know that this is a new series, right? We completed our last series on accountability 2 weeks ago. Today's first episode on this new series about change. So we're starting with culture. Then we're going to talk about change management. We're going to talk about embracing change and then making change happen. So, this is the first of 4 episodes in this series on change. And, I'm really looking forward to this because this is a major leadership thing.
It is. And change is not easy.
No.
People get very comfortable in doing things the way they've been doing things. And so we're going to talk about that.
Yes.
Because getting comfortable, being uncomfortable is how you move forward.
100%.
All right. Well, thank you, Chris. This has been a great chat today. And I
always
can't wait to have one of these conversations again in 2 weeks. Every other Saturday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're way over in sunny California, I guess we can talk about 7 a.m. on the West Coast. But thank you again for everybody who watches this on a regular basis and appreciates these conversations. Please put a comment below if you and let us know what you're interested in. Ask questions if you want to. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please do that. Please do that. It raises awareness for these issues and it gets the word out to a broader audience. There's a little thing called an algorithm on social media, and I need to hop on that wave to enable to get this word out there.
JJ, tell them the website. Tell them the YouTube channel.
So if you look up Victory Leadership Coaching, you'll find it on YouTube. If you look up Resilience in Leadership, you'll find it. It's on there. So that channel is actually called Resilience in Leadership and Business with JJ Hardy. But if you look up Victory Leadership Coaching, that's the they call it a slug. So you'll find it there too.
Awesome.
Please subscribe to the channel. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Chris, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Always. I'll see you in a couple. See you, everybody.
See you, everybody.